process can take 2 to 3 years. So a lot of families want to treat to try to speed up their molluscum journey.
Welcome to the Learn Skin podcast with me, Dr. Raja.
And me, Dr. Hadar, where we discuss all things skin.
Join us as we delve into the art and science of skin health in today's episode.
Hey, Raja, can you say the thing I told you to tell them?
Of course. We are board-certified dermatologists. This podcast is meant for educational and informational purposes only and is not considered medical advice, nor does it serve as a substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. All opinions shared do not express the views of Learn Health, Inc. Let's get to the good stuff.
What's up, Hadar? No, you know what? There is no what's up. He's not here today. So it's just me, and I'm going to be the host for today's podcast. And of course, we always have fun. And, today on the Learn Skin podcast, I've been thinking, and I'm going to ask all of you, what I've been thinking about. I've been thinking about all those children that we always see that come in with molluscum. And I have to tell you, it is also maybe we think of it as something that we can easily just let it be, but it's also like one of the most frequently asked questions that I see amongst the pediatric patients that I see, and our pediatric dermatologist sees it all the time. But we've got one of the, I think, most dynamic experts, super favorite speaker, maybe my favorite speaker of all time. And she's got a love for Taylor Smith. I already brought it in, so we're going to talk about it as we go along. But Dr. Elizabeth Swanson, she's a board-certified dermatologist and a pediatric dermatologist. And she is so dynamic as a speaker, if any of you have had the chance to hear her talk. But what I like about her is she takes everything and makes it so practical. And she's practicing out in Idaho. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about your practice too. But Lisa, welcome to the podcast. And I'm super excited to be talking to you.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here, Raja. Yes, I live in Boise, Idaho, land of potatoes. And I work in private practice at Ada West Dermatology. And then I'm affiliated with St. Luke's Children's Hospital, which is our wonderful little children's hospital here in Boise, Idaho.
I love it. So maybe before we get into any of these medical conversations, I really want to hear a little bit more about, your path. How did you choose to go down pediatric dermatology? And then have you always thought that I was going to be in private practice? Like, what was that path?
Good questions. Yes, good questions. I feel like I didn't choose pediatric dermatology. It chose me.
I love it.
Because when I was in medical school, I knew I wanted to be a dermatologist. My own dermatologist growing up helped me so much. I always thought that what she did was so cool. And so I wanted to do that too. I had never heard of pediatric dermatology. And then I was in my residency. I did my residency at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, whoop, whoop. And I was in my first year of derm on my peds derm rotation. And I thought to myself, you know what? I think I'm happier on these days. And it was just not something that was on my radar at all until all of a sudden I had an epiphany that it was the field that I was meant for. And so it was a real surprise to me. It was a real surprise to my parents. I remember when I told them, hey guys, I'm going to be a pediatric dermatologist. They were like, really? And I was like,
were they in medicine, Lisa, out of curiosity?
Yes, my dad is a urologist and my mom is a librarian, retired librarian. And so they were very surprised by my decision, but it felt right. And so I did a Peds Derm fellowship at Phoenix Children's Hospital with Dr. Ron Hansen, one of the grandfathers of Peds Derm.
Amazing.
And, even if I hadn't ended up loving Peds Derm as much as I did, I feel like I'm a better doctor for the year I spent with him. It was really, really wonderful, and I enjoyed that time so much. And then I was in Denver in private practice for 10 years before being recruited to Idaho to become the first and only pediatric dermatologist in the state of Idaho.
Oh, you're kidding me. Really?
Yeah. I'm the only one. Yeah.
Still?
Yeah. Still.
No way.
Yeah. I think I'm going to be the only one for a while.
That's amazing. So you went straight into private practice then after your fellowship and everything? What was that thought process? Because so many people are told from attendings when we're in training and whatnot that really the path to go is academics, or many people end up in a hospital. Very few people go the private practice route, especially in peds derm. How did that play out?
No, you are correct, especially in peds derm. I mean, I think when I finished my training and I chose to be in private practice as a pediatric dermatologist, I think there were only like 2 other peds derms in the United States who are doing private practice. And I say that somewhat facetiously, but also somewhat truthfully. It was like me, Fred Ghali, and Pearl Kwong. And, now I haven't seen any official statistics, but it feels like now about a third of peds derms end up in private practice. I just knew, for me and my personality, I just knew that private practice was the right setting for me. I like to be able to practice medicine and treat patients the way I see fit. I don't always love a lot of like rules and committees telling me what to do.
Oh
I
my
just
God.
knew with my personality, private practice was the way to go. And it's really cool. You can make private practice everything you want it to be. Like, I have med students and residents who work with me. You can have that in private practice. I have an affiliation with a children's hospital. You can have that in private practice. And so I think some of the selling points to academic medicine you actually can get if you work in private practice and just kind of tell people what you'd like to make your career want to be.
Lisa, this is awesome because actually, I love that we're talking about. We will get back to molluscum at some point here,
Yeah.
but because I think this is something that a lot of people don't talk about, which is, private practice doesn't mean you're trading away all these other loves that you might have.
No,
And
definitely
so,
not.
that's something that I found too when I was in academics. I loved it, but when I went to private practice, I was doing more research than I'd ever done before. And that was because that was my choice. I could have done other things like, like your affiliations.
Yeah.
So what do you think are some of the misconceptions? I know this wasn't, again, not molluscum, but
Yeah.
God, I am so interested to ask because you are so dynamic. You've clearly like probably, walked the path as it's come and kind of just taken it as it's come to you. I feel like that's kind of like your personality, but
Yeah. Yeah.
can you tell me what are some of the maybe hidden pros of private practice that maybe a lot of people don't realize when you're first thinking about it?
I think really number one is just kind of freedom to make your practice what you want it to be. It's pretty easy in private practice, especially if you join a big group where you can focus on the type of patients and the type of things that you want to do and want to see. I work with a large group. We have 26 clinicians, and so we've got 3 Mohs surgeons, 3 derm paths. I do peds derm. 2 folks focus on cosmetics. And so when you're with a big group, you can really kind of make your day-to-day practice life exactly what you want it to be. You also get access to things like samples and biologic coordinators and things that actually help you help your patients even better. And those rules aren't the same at every academic center, but so many academic centers are restricted as to their contact for access support programs through pharmaceutical companies, or they might not be allowed to have samples. And I'll tell you what, Raja, I love samples.
Lisa, let's talk about samples.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? We're moving in the right direction with this. I love this conversation. This conversation is like so interesting.
Yeah.
When we come to samples, there's a lot of like worry that the samples are going to influence you and then it's going to shift the way that you're thinking about pharmaceuticals. But what is your reply to that? Because I have a feeling that I'm gonna add in my 2 cents on this too because
Yeah.
samples, I feel like open up an opportunity for you to actually get things for patients that couldn't get them otherwise.
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about that? I mean, do you feel like the samples influence you, or do you think that there's another like hidden benefit of samples that maybe we're kind of missing the boat on?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they influence me because I think, pretty much all of the brand name pharmaceuticals out there in dermatology, we get samples of. So it's not like I'm forced to choose one
An
over
equal
the other,
opportunity
fortunately.
sampler.
Yes, yes, yes. So fortunately, we get samples of pretty much everything. And one of the biggest perks, in my opinion, is being able to start patients on their treatment plan right there that day. So especially when you're thinking about biologics or systemic agents to treat psoriasis or atopic dermatitis, and you go through this big discussion about shared decision making and the options that are available. And then
Right.
after a very thorough discussion, you and the patient decide that medicine A is the best one for them. You can go to your fridge or to your closet and say, okay, let's start this today. Let's get this going. And we'll give you your first dose. And then we'll go ahead and get the insurance company involved to get you your future doses. Because the way I think about it, if I'm at Nordstrom, Raja, and I see a pair of shoes that I really want, and the clerk tells me that they don't have my size, but they can mail it to me in a couple of weeks, that immediately makes me sad. If I have made this decision to buy this pair of shoes, I want to put those shoes on right now and walk out the store.
I love your analogy. So, we're going to come back to the analogy master in a second here, but for all of you that don't know, she is the queen of analogies, and
Oh, thanks, Raja.
I love it. But I think more than the samples being, something that influences you, I think it allows you to get people started on things because we know that the insurance companies typically will deny things while we're trying our hardest to get them through. And I have to say, one way that we've all gotten united as physicians is the fact that sometimes we make a decision on what's the best treatment, and then we have to convince someone that we've already gone through the treatment, options, and we think this is the best treatment. And now we have to play this, this game of going back and forth with the insurance company. The samples kind of help at least mitigate that path, don't you think?
Yes, you are preaching to the choir. Like, it takes away the stress for both you and your patient of how long is it going to take for me to get this medicine approved. And meanwhile, is my patient just struggling in the meantime? You know that they're not, because you know that you've started their medicine, you've given them samples to get them on the road to recovery while you're working through the amazing, everlasting struggle that is insurance prior auth processes.
Oh my gosh, we'll go on a big tangent here, but okay, so to get us back on task, before we go to molluscum, I do have to ask another really important question.
Yes.
You are a dynamic speaker,
Oh.
and you are very engaging. Were you always like that? I mean, for all of those medical students out there or people that have always like wondered, can I go out there and talk? Or maybe they get nervous. Have you always just had a natural affinity for it, or did that grow with time? What was your journey there? Because now you do a lot of speaking, and I love coming to your talks.
Oh,
And
thank
I
you.
have to imagine, I imagine you being born and being like, mother, I'm going to ovulate you. But I doubt that's how it worked, right? So how did it
Yeah.
all work?
Yeah, I think I actually emerged from the womb with a microphone, like ready to go.
Right.
No, I mean, it's a little bit of both. Like, I was never afraid of public speaking. Jerry Seinfeld does this amazing bit where he says, the number one reported worst fear is public speaking. Number two is death. So more people are afraid of what I'm doing right now than dying. It's pretty
Yeah,
funny.
and why do you think that is? What is it about speaking that you think terrifies people so much?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I mean, I think maybe it's just you're afraid to mess up in front of an
Yeah.
audience, or maybe you just don't like the feeling of, a lot of eyes on you in the moment. But I was never afraid of public speaking. But then the whole thing kind of emerged actually when I was back in Denver, and I was in private practice as a pediatric dermatologist, and I was trying to grow my practice because I was the first peds derm in private practice in Denver. The other folks were at Children's Colorado. And so I would go and do CMEs with pediatricians in family practice. I would do lunch and learns. I would do small conferences in the area. And as I was doing more of that, I was like, gosh, I kind of like this stuff. And then as you do more of it, you get asked to do more of it. And so one opportunity leads to the next and leads to the next. And it just kind of snowballed to where it is today. But I honestly, Raja, like, speaking for me has become my therapy for burnout, because
Ooh.
I have struggled with burnout through my career,
Yeah.
and clinic can be a really big grind, just being in clinic all the time, nonstop. And I found that when I could go out there and speak about all the exciting stuff that we can do to help our patients and all the wonderful stories that I get to hear about in clinic every day. When I can bring that to life for other folks and hopefully inspire other folks and empower other folks to go out there and treat kids with skin disease, that restores my passion in the field. And so, this kind of yin yang that I have going on about speaking and clinic life, it really helps me balance me as a human being and as a medical professional.
Lisa, when was the, yeah, can you remember, like, when was the first time you were like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling burned out? Like, what was it? Like, what was that
Oh,
feeling like? What was the moment like? And what did you do
yeah.
to like change course?
Yes. I remember I was probably 5 years out of residency and I had been working a lot. I had been, adding on days in clinic. I had been seeing a lot of patients. I'm a people pleaser to the core. And
Yeah,
so, if anybody, as the need for appointments grew, I was like, well, I just have to work more and I just have to do more clinic and I just have
yeah,
to see more patients. And I think in the meantime, we had switched to EMR, electronic medical record, which
yeah.
did add to my kind of charting time at home. And I just remember actually being at brunch with my boyfriend Larry, and I felt this like exhaustion and
Mm.
just this like I don't know. I there's no other way to put it. I just told my boyfriend Larry, like, gosh, I think I'm really burned out.
Ugh.
And so there started the road to recovery. And I went on Amazon and ordered like 8 billion books about physician burnout, and I read them
Yeah.
all. And then I used all of that to create, I do talks on burnout, I speak on burnout. And so I used all of that personal journey to create talks on burnout, which also ended up helping my burnout. So, yeah.
Lisa, I mean, we will get to molluscum, but this is way more interesting right now. So, I mean, because a lot of people struggle with this. I think
Yeah.
there's so many, I see medical students working super hard to get into residency. Then they get there. And then a lot of them are like, well, this was my goal. Now what do I do?
Right.
And then they get through that. And then it's the next step. And then, like you said, we're all kind of trained to be people pleasers. And I'm definitely in that camp too, where it's like, oh, let me just add you in, add you in,
Right.
add you in. And then you have a clinic that's like really
Crazy.
long. And then you're like doing all these notes. What was maybe the first step that you took to say, okay, I'm going to pull myself out of this? Like you read a ton of books, you
Yeah.
probably have imbibed a lot of wisdom now. What would you tell someone is the first step to take to get pull themselves out of burnout?
And I think it's probably a little bit different for everybody. I was an English major in college. I turned to books for help and guidance. And so for me, literally that day after brunch with my boyfriend Larry, I went on Amazon and I ordered a bunch of books. I started reading
Ah,
them,
so it was
started
reading.
Yes, yes. And so I started highlighting, and immediately as I was like learning more, I was like, I've got to make a talk on this. And so as I was doing it, I was making notes for that, and that was really helpful too. And so, I think it's different for everybody. I think whether it's going to therapy, I think that can be great for so many folks. Starting a journal, in case you don't feel comfortable like verbally discussing how you're feeling with somebody, at least put it in a journal and get those thoughts and feelings out. I think it is important if you're dealing with burnout to try to take a step back and reduce your workload a little bit, just so you have the time and energy and focus to focus on yourself for a little bit and get yourself back to baseline. I would go through my calendar and I would put like 2 or 3 days a month on hold, meaning that no patients
That's
could
interesting.
be scheduled on those days. Yeah. And so, because the thing is, when you need a moment, when you feel like you need a day, you feel too guilty to take that day off because all those patients will need to be rescheduled. And so what I started to proactively put 2 or 3 days a month on hold and then gauge how I was feeling, a couple weeks out. And if I felt like I needed a day, I closed the day. If I felt like I was doing all right, I opened it up for patient scheduling. And so it allowed me to have time when I needed it without the burden of rescheduling patients and all that kind of stuff. And that's a practice I continue to this day.
Wow. Well, that is so useful. And then now, finally, let's talk about molluscum.
Yay!
And maybe we should title this as Burnout and Molluscum. They are related. No.
They are. I think they are. Yeah.
But okay, so let's talk a little bit about molluscum. Maybe if you can just give a background for all of us, just what is molluscum, and then what is your approach to maybe just the discussion with parents or the patient with molluscum before we get to treatments.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So molluscum are caused by a virus. It's a pox family virus. Pretty much all kids will get this. Some kids get it mildly. They might have a spot or two and it goes away naturally on its own, and then other kids get it to a worser degree. Kids with eczema tend to get it really bad. The molluscum virus will eventually run its course and the immune system will figure it out, and the molluscum will always eventually go away, even if left untreated. But that process can take 2 to 3 years. So a lot of families want to treat to try to speed up their molluscum journey. And so that's kind of how I think about molluscum, and that's how I explain it actually to parents as well.
That's great. And then, when we're thinking about molluscum, obviously, a lot of parents will say, okay, when you say it's self-limited, they're like, but it's growing more and more, and it's
I
getting
know.
hundreds, and it's been 2 years, and it's still growing. How do you answer those questions, and how do
Yeah.
you approach that?
I think it can be very psychologically distressing to have a condition or have your child have a condition where you see the numbers of spots multiplying over time. That is it wreaks havoc on your mental health. And so I completely understand that viewpoint of it. I do make sure they know that treatment is not mandatory. They will clear on their own because that's what the pediatrician has said. And I definitely don't want to disagree with the pediatrician. What the pediatrician told them is correct. We don't have to treat. But for families that want to treat, they end up seeing somebody like me, and I'm happy to treat them. And we've got all of these options to choose from. And so if families want to treat, let's do it. Let's go for it. I remember there was an article where it looked at 177 kids with molluscum, and they treated half of them and they didn't treat half of them, and they all went away in roughly the same amount of time.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I know. And sometimes I'll share that with families, and the parents just look at me with this blank face, and then they say, but we're gonna treat them, right? And it's like, of course we are. Let's do this.
That's so funny. Well, why don't we talk about these treatment options? Because, I guess whether they actually accelerate their, as we say, hasten their disappearance or not, what are some of the treatments that you like to approach? And maybe you can tell us the typical ones, but I'm sure you've got some tricks up your sleeve. I mean, I can't imagine you don't.
Yeah, I know, right? With all the molluscum I see, sometimes when families are like, but I've never heard of this. None of my friends have it. I was like, they all do. Their kids all have it. They
Yeah,
just aren't,
seriously.
screaming from the rooftops about it. And I often say, like, spend a day with me and you'll see more molluscum than you've ever thought possible. So, I think there's a lot of different potential options to treat molluscum. I'll kind of go through a few of them, kind of the hot spots. I actually do prescribe a fair bit of imiquimod to treat molluscum, and I know it's controversial and some people don't think it works, but I actually do think it works. And when I'm giving talks at conferences, I sometimes feel a little bit self-conscious of that. And sometimes I feel like I need to say, hello, my name is Lisa, and I think imiquimod works for molluscum, because it is somewhat controversial. Now, the way that I have them use it, I tell them to just apply it to 2 or 3 spots Monday, Wednesday, Friday at bedtime. So not all of them, and just Monday, Wednesday, Friday at bedtime. Imiquimod is cheap and easy and doesn't hurt, and it costs less than $20 on the GoodRx app, even if insurance doesn't cover it, which is actually pretty typical that insurance doesn't cover the treatment of molluscum. And so I actually do a fair bit of imiquimod. I also do a fair bit of Candida antigen injections. And so I use Candida antigen and inject 0.3 milliliters into 1 molluscum. I tell families it is a series of treatments. So we treat every 3 to 4 weeks until they're gone. Typically takes 3 to 5 treatments to have them all gone.
Are those kids a little older when you're coming at them with the needle, or what age group is that?
Yes and know. I think it's highly variable. Certainly a younger kiddo isn't as enthusiastic about considering it, but the Candida antigen shot is really not bad. It literally just feels like a little pinch, just for a second. Most of the time I can, walk kids through it, and it really just hurts for a second. There's no after discomfort or anything like that. And so most of the time I feel like I can get it done. Plus we have a pretty great prize box at my office, and so that always helps
That's
a
the
whole lot.
key.
Yes, yes. A couple other treatments worth mentioning, Beetlejuice is something that we've used for years and years. It has become a bit interesting in recent years since the brand name version was officially approved by the FDA, because a lot of us were procuring Beetlejuice from various sources, and a lot of those sources have dried up because of the official FDA approved version, which the FDA approved version has had some stumbling blocks in terms of access and getting it to patients and to clinics. So that's been kind of an interesting journey. One thing I would say about Beetlejuicing molluscum, the first time you treat a child with Beetlejuice, I would encourage you to just treat 5 spots.
Yeah, that makes
because,
sense.
because I'll
Yeah.
tell families, like, we could do Beetlejuice, we apply it in the office, you wash it off in 4 hours, it causes blisters tonight or tomorrow. The blisters are usually small and not a big deal, but sometimes the blisters are uncomfortable. The blisters tend to last about 3 days. How many times did I say blister, Raja?
Well, that is one of the problems, right? Because you don't know how much it's going to blister on a given child, and then
Exactly,
I
exactly.
mean,
Yeah. And so by just treating 5, you
that's a
allow the
great
parent
idea.
to get kind of a sense for what to expect from the treatment before you've treated 30.
Oh my
And
gosh, can
then,
you imagine?
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
that's the problem.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
so you've got the child that's like, I don't want, or maybe even the adult that I don't want anything that's going to be injection. I don't want a bunch of blisters, and I don't know about this topical. Do you still have any tricks up your sleeve about then, or do you just kind of like sing to it in
Yeah.
Taylor Swift tunes to make
That
them?
would be great. Yeah. Maybe like Taylor Swift Shake It Off or something
Oh,
like
oh my
that.
God. See, I knew it. I was just like, okay, for everybody listening, I like every time Lisa talks, I'm like trying to see how is she going to weave in Taylor Swift. She did it. It's a win. It's a win. It's a wrap.
You
No.
you set me up. You set me up, Raja. I just brought it home. So I mean, occasionally I will use cimetidine for molluscum, particularly when the molluscum are exclusively on a child's face.
I see.
And so, I think there's controversy as to whether or not cimetidine does anything as well, but it's pretty easy. It's used for heartburn. The most common side effect is increased gassiness, and the kids all giggle about that. The only hardship with cimetidine is it used to come available in a liquid, and the liquid was discontinued. So now to get it in a liquid form, you have to have it compounded, which often adds expense. But I do a fair bit of cimetidine, and sometimes I'll do a combination, cimetidine plus Candida or cimetidine plus imiquimod. And then recently, Raja, I've started using KOH, 10%
No
KOH.
way. Wow. Just to irritate the skin a bit.
Exactly, exactly. And so you just apply it with a Q-tip and just dab it on the spots. I had read about this treatment, but hadn't really done it yet. And then one of my patients' families had recently been to France, and they sell a version of KOH 10% over the counter as a molluscum treatment in
Oh,
France.
wow.
And so they had brought it home with them and showed it to me. And I said, "Oh yeah, I would love it if you would try that, because I've been meaning to try that." And it worked so great for this one patient. Now, it is just one, but I've prescribed it a few more times since. So I'm excited to see how kids do with it.
Well, I love that you're talking about this because one, we need to travel more just to see what everybody's doing out there, right?
Right?
So it's a business
Yes.
expense. But actually, I've started to do tea tree oil and some essential oils that you're never supposed to put on the skin, but I'll have them put a little dab of it on molluscum just to irritate it.
Yes.
And I've seen that that's been helpful in a small group of people too.
I think that can be very helpful. In fact, there used to be a variety of natural remedies for molluscum that were available over the counter. Things like molluscum RX and Zymoderm. And tea tree
Interesting.
oil was a key ingredient in a lot of those. Those have since been discontinued since the FDA approval of the cantharidin product, which I think is kind of unfortunate. I actually
Yeah, it is
think a lot of those
unfortunate.
treatments work very well.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. And I just have them go buy the tea tree oil now. And I just tell them, be very careful, but just put a tiny little bit. And, it's been okay. Now, some people de-roof these molluscum. Do you take that approach, or do you have any comments on that?
I don't curette them. It's a reasonable treatment, and if your practice, dear listener, if your practice is to do that, no disrespect to that approach. It's the one thing where you can get them gone that day. However, it does really hurt. They do
Yeah.
bleed a lot. It's
Yeah.
not, it's not right for every kiddo. But I think if that's your practice style, I see nothing wrong with it. Sometimes I do joke with the families that if we scraped them off, at the end we'll all be crying. I'll be crying, the patient will be crying, the mom will be crying.
I love it. Well, what a great conversation today, Lisa. I mean, this was awesome. We talked about private practice, burnout, and molluscum, things that we typically always talk about. No, I'm just kidding. But that being said, before we kind of wrap this up, do you have any words of advice for anyone that's contemplating, what am I going to do with my career? How am I going to approach, all the different options that are out there? I know, Peds Derm kind of spoke to you, but there's always that moment where you're like, gosh, what am I supposed to do next? What do you tell that person?
Yeah. Well, and before we officially close the molluscum journey, I should mention that we do have a new medicine that's coming out soon.
Oh, yeah,
in
please.
June.
Yep,
Yes,
yep.
just to quickly touch on that because it is exciting. It's our second FDA-approved treatment option for molluscum. It's called berdazimer gel, and we're expecting it to be available in June. It is interesting because it is a nitric oxide releasing gel applied once a day at home to the skin lesions. And so parents will actually be prescribed 2 components of the medicine to mix in the palm of their hand and then apply to the affected areas because nitric oxide, of course, is a gas. And so it doesn't stick around for very long. So I am very much looking forward to having that in our toolbox in June. And then regarding kind of life's journey and where we all end up, I don't have infinite wisdom, but I do watch Bluey a lot. And I think that the characters on Bluey do have infinite wisdom. And I think, in one episode, Bandit the dog says, obstacles do not block your path. Obstacles are the path. And so I think we should look at every roadblock that we experience in our life, every setback as a positive thing that is actually guiding our way to where we'll be in the end. And I think life has a way of just kind of working it all out. I have a greeting card that I send to people who are going through a tough time, and it says, everything will be okay in the end. If it's not okay, it's not the end. And I really kind of believe that. I think we all end up where we're meant to be. And for me, that's Peds Derm, which I highly recommend for everybody listening. Peds Derm is the best. And you get to talk about Bluey all day with your patients. It's wonderful.
Gosh, I love it. Well, there you have it. Lisa Swanson, dermatologist, and now philosopher.
Yes.
I love this. So I appreciate you spending a little bit of time with us, and thanks for joining us. And for all of you out there, if you want to hear more from faculty just like Lisa Swanson, check us out, Learn Skin, and actually come to our conference, the Integrative Dermatology Symposium. And this year it's August 22nd through the 24th, and we're going to be in Arizona, in Tucson. So come take a listen and meet us all. And thank you again, Lisa, for spending some time.
Thank you, Raja, and I'll be there in Arizona. I'm excited.
Yes. Oh, you know what? Then since you mentioned that, what are you talking about there?
I'm actually talking about molluscum.
There you go. No, we're super excited, and then maybe just maybe we'll be passing out some tea tree oil and things like that. No, I don't know, but regardless, yes. So looking forward to you speaking and looking forward to the conference.
Awesome.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining, and thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Raja. Thanks for having me.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. But Raja, every time we dive into these conversations, it feels like there's still so much more to uncover.
Exactly, Hadar. That's why I look forward to IDS every year. It's the perfect place to continue exploring the latest in research sharing ideas, and learning how to apply integrative strategies in real-world dermatology practice.
And this year's theme couldn't be more relevant. Guide your patients towards a healthy biome and optimal skin health. We know that skin health isn't just about treating the surface. It's about understanding the biome and how it connects to the overall health of our patients.
And that's exactly what we'll be tackling at the 8th Integrative Dermatology Symposium happening August 21st through the 24th at the Westin La Paloma Resort and Spa in Tucson, Arizona.
Now, we've got an amazing lineup of expert-led sessions covering key dermatology conditions like eczema, psoriasis, vitiligo, alopecia areata, and melasma, plus insights into how movement, weight loss, and even coca polyphenols can impact your skin health.
Now, who doesn't want some good cocoa polyphenols? I know you do, Hadar. And you
Oh,
and
yeah.
your food addictions. And what really makes IDS special is the interactive format. It's not just about sitting through lectures, and we really make that a point. We'll have real-world case discussions, hands-on workshops, and plenty of opportunities to connect with colleagues who are just as passionate about integrative dermatology as we are.
And folks, let's not forget about the location. The Westin La Paloma Resort and Spa. That's the perfect place to learn and recharge. And you can relax by the waterfalls, stargaze under the Arizona sky, play around a golf or tennis, or unwind at the spa. And of course, we'll have evening receptions where you can catch up with your colleagues and make new connections.
Now, who doesn't want to go stargazing and whisper sweet integrative everythings, not nothings, Hadar, to each other? Now, that sounds like the ideal way to learn, recharge, and connect all in one weekend. And if you haven't already, head over to integrativedermatologysymposium.com to check out all the details and save your spot now.
That's integrativedermatologysymposium.com. And as a special thank you to our podcast listeners, we're excited to offer 15% off your IDS registration. Just use the code podcast15 when you sign up. Simply head over to integrativedermatologysymposium.com to register. We can't wait to see you at IDS 2025 in Tucson, Arizona. Let's take integrative dermatology to the next level together.